Good morning, everybody, and welcome to session number 3 of our AEP educational series. We're glad you could join us today. Just a reminder, please place yourselves on mute. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to take yourselves off mute and pose the question to our panelists. Otherwise, you can also type a question into the chat box and we'll respond to those as we can. Today's series is on criterion number 18. And we have Francois Imon from the Canadian Public Procurement Council here today to discuss Criterion 18 as an evaluator. But first, just a few minutes from our sponsor, Pavilion. We'd like to thank Pavilion for sponsoring this AEP educational series, allowing us to provide these to you at no charge. And Becca is here today from Pavilion. So Becca, thank you, and please proceed.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you might be in the country. Excited to just share a couple of brief minutes with you all a little bit more about Pavilion. As Brian said, my name is Becca, and I manage our partnerships. At a very high level, Pavilion allows you to find, use, and share contracts from peer public entities all in one place, completely for free. And if you've been with us for the first couple of sessions, some of this will sound very familiar to you, but I promise I'm going to share some new things today in case that is exciting or enticing at all. So we're longtime supporters of NPI and continue to be thrilled to sponsor the AEP educational sessions. For some quick context here, in case you have not heard from us yet, we're building Pavilion because the work that procurement does is incredibly important for our communities. And the spirit of collaboration is really, really strong within procurement teams. It's something I noticed in working on partnerships with entities all over the country. The willingness to share and learn from each other is really incredible. However, the tools that sort of power public procurement don't really support that spirit and can often be stuck in the 90s, which means that you have to rely on phone calls and emails and visits to unfriendly websites to track down information and work that's already been done. And we have the technology in our personal lives that makes buying decisions really easy. We can order takeout, we can hire a babysitter, but we don't really harness that same technology in public procurement. And so at Pavilion, we're building the free technology to really help empower you to access the work of your peers all in one place. So the goal is to really save you time and help you search the widest number of contracts. We have more than 100,000 cooperative and piggybackable contracts from over 400 public entities and cooperatives, and that number is really growing every day. We're also adding in a lot of customization options and the ability to set preferences to help you meet your entity's compliance needs and preferences every time you search. So to just give you a very quick overview of what that looks like, I'm going to actually just run a very quick search. And I realized that I never started sharing my screen. So I've been using slides that you have not been seeing. And Brian, can you actually help me share my screen because it is disabled? Thank you. Well, you're going to get to see the good part anyways. This is really the best part. The slides are not that exciting or anything. All right. So if you head to withpavilion.com, which everybody can actually see now, right? Perfect. Okay. If you head to withpavilion.com and you're not already logged in, once you start searching, you'll actually be prompted to create a login. It takes about 30 seconds. You just set a password, totally free, like I said. I'm starting at a logged in point and I have my entity set as Maricopa County in Arizona. I'm going to just run a couple quick searches here to give you an idea of what this looks like. So the first one I'm going to do is election mailing. Something that is kind of specific. Also, you'd probably want to be looking for local contracts in this case. And so as you can see here, when we run a search for that, I'm pulling in a bunch of different results, all in Arizona. I've got Peoria, Pinal County, City of Mesa. I've got my own contract as Maricopa County. And when I jump into one of these contracts, there's some basic information here that helps me kind of speed through that due diligence process, or at least that's what this page is designed to do. So some key information like expiration date and contract number are listed right at the top. We have a summary around what's covered in this contract and what's covered in the scope as well. The documents are here for you to peruse through based on the specific criteria you might be looking to validate with these. You can download them individually or you can download everything all at once. You can also get in touch with suppliers here. So if I'm looking for a quote, and you would be more specific in what you're reaching out for. But once you click that button, we're going to take you to a page here where we've crafted a basic message that will go to the supplier. It will reference the specific thing you're looking for, the contract that you're looking at, and where you're located so that the supplier knows where they would need to deliver or implement this service. So I promised to show you some new things today, a couple of quick little things. If I'm going to run a search for EV charging stations, one of the new things we have added into the site is the ability to set preferences and customization, like I said, based on the entities or the cooperatives that you can use. So here we're searching for EV charging stations. I'm getting a lot of different co-op options. In my preferences here, I can say I only want to see contracts from approved sources. And now you can see that changes my search results a little bit here. We had TIPS contracts, and now I'm seeing Sourcewell because I can't use TIPS as Maricopa County. So that ability is set in your preferences, in the account preferences right at the top here, and you can reach out to our team if that's something that's helpful for you. The final thing I want to show you today is that you can now also search for contracts from a specific entity. So when I type in Maricopa County and I click View Contracts, I have a list of all of the Maricopa County contracts that are on Pavilion today, and I can actually search for these. Search within these specifically. So here, if I do temporary staffing, now I can see just temporary staffing contracts from Maricopa County. So some fun updates that have been added to Pavilion in the last couple weeks here, and wanted to just show off some new features, especially for the folks that have already heard this presentation a couple of times. So I'll wrap things up here. I know the session today is around continuing excellence, and I really hope that Pavilion can be a tool that helps you achieve that. We are honored to partner with MPI and support the AEP program. And so please reach out to myself. My email is here. It's just Becca with Pavilion. You can also reach out to our CEO, Marielle. She'll probably be joining us next time if you have any questions or want to sort of do a more in-depth walkthrough for your team. Thank you very much, and back to you, Brian.
Excellent. Thanks, Becca. I mentioned this, I think, the last time, but I find Pavilion extremely useful in searching for cooperative contracts. We used to have to go to all of these different websites to search cooperatives, and now it's one source. So it's really a great tool. And once again, we appreciate Becca and Pavilion for sponsoring the AEP Educational Series and being a strategic partner with MPI and the AEP program. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Francois. He's going to talk a little bit about Criterion 18. When we introduced this criteria about 5 years ago, I think it was, we really were looking to say, hey, procurement professionals out there, what do you define as excellence? You tell us what is procurement excellence in your organization or your agency. And I can tell you, since then, we've had some fantastic submittals. We have a lot of great ideas out there that you and your colleagues are doing throughout North America. So I would encourage you, if you haven't, take a look at some of the best practices on the model submittals for Criterion 18. I know Francois is going to go over some of those today. But if you have any questions, refer to our website, take a look at those model submittals. And Francois, thanks for being with us here today.
Dora. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francois Aymon, as Brian said. I'm with the Canadian Public Procurement Council. So the CPPC is actually a sponsor of the award and the only sponsor of the award in Canada. As you may have already picked it up, I'm French Canadian and I'm from Quebec. And I've been sitting on the evaluations committee for a few years now. I think it's my second term, and I've been doing Criteria 18 for the last few years. And it's actually, as Brian mentioned, it's actually one that I enjoy doing because it keeps me connected with best practices in the profession. And we see a lot of projects that are very interesting, that demonstrate excellence and provides us great input on what the best practices are. So it's really interesting. Hopefully, I'm going to provide some information that will be helpful for you to make a presentation on this item, because we see out of the many applications we receive, many of them don't have a submittal for 18. So hopefully after this presentation, you will have what it takes to hopefully submit for something, and also some guidance as to what are the things that are important, what we look at when we evaluate this criteria. So I'll share my screen and hopefully that will work. I've prepared a few slides that show hopefully something. I can't see anyone anymore. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, Brian, thumbs up. Is it okay?
We are not seeing your screen yet.
Okay, hold on. I'm getting there.
There it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. So just starting, I guess, with the narrative of the criterion itself, it's demonstrate a performance improvement over and above any criterion listed in this application. What new program, procedure, innovation, process improvement did you enact? Did it solve a problem? How did it improve the performance or efficiency of your agency? Did it save you money or find ways to optimize resources? How were the results measured? So I'm gonna highlight out of those, out of the narrative, a few things that are key that I'm gonna put emphasis on in the next few slides that are very important when we look at the evaluations or the submittals for this one. First of all, over and above any criterion listed in the application, you'll see that there's 18, so there's 17 others that are part of the overall submittal process. So it has to be over and above any criterion. Did it solve a problem? Or was it an opportunity that came up? It's something, again, that is very important that we need to assess when we evaluate. How did it improve the performance or efficiency of the agency? Again, we need to see a demonstration or a clear demonstration of not only did it solve a problem, but did it improve the performance or efficiency of the agency? And were there results that we were able to measure? So those are the few main things that are critical when we look at the submittals that we receive. So, and what do you have to submit? Obviously, a narrative explaining the project, the action plan or innovation, which must be procurement related. I'll come back to that later. A narrative that clearly identified the problem and explained the solution, action plan or innovation, and also a date, so implementation on or after January 1st, 2022. And second item, clear measurable performance result of the projects. It's actually an item that we put more emphasis in the last few years to make sure that it's a continued that we pursue excellence in what we do, and that we see in the project that something real was improved, and that we can benchmark and validate situation before and situation after. So how to make sure that your project is over and above any existing criterion? It's plain and simple. Just take the time to read the narrative of all the other 17 criteria. Unfortunately, it happens many times that we are not able to grant points for this one, because the project that was submitted was a project that was actually in line with another criteria. So we have to make sure that you have to make sure actually that you read the narrative of all the others, and that it's not in line at all with the topics referred to in the other items, even for the ones that you're not necessarily submitting for. It would make sense, obviously, that if you submit something for 18 and that it's not over and above, it would be in line with something that you submitted already. But it's important that you take time to read through all the other ones and make sure that the project you submit is not in line, because it will not meet the intent of the criteria. Project identified must also be procurement related and demonstrate that your agency is pursuing excellence in the way that it does its procurement. So procurement related is very important. We see sometimes some projects that we cannot see in the narrative of how it was presented, that it was clearly procurement related. So it's very important that if the project you're submitting it's not necessarily clear that it's procurement related, that you make sure that in the narrative we can see what is the link between procurement versus the process that you're trying to improve. So that's something that you want to keep in mind as well. Sorry, just getting to a project that therefore refers to day-to-day activities or what is considered as normal for a procurement function may not be accepted. That's another important aspect. Sometimes we will receive projects that are actually a demonstration of a day-to-day activity within the procurement agency. So it's not necessarily something that is considered as pursuing excellence in procurement. So it has to be procurement related, demonstrate that you're pursuing excellence, and therefore making sure that it does not necessarily refer to day-to-day activities. It could be the improvement of a process that has an impact on day-to-day activities, but not necessarily something that is really tactic, if I may say, that actually may not be considered for this one. What we need to clearly see in your application, and again, I'll go through in a few minutes a few of the model submittal. We need to see the problem. We need to have a narrative and detailed enough narrative of what the problem was. What was the solution that was implemented? So it's really important that we see that, what was the solution implemented? How did it solve the problem? We need to see that the implementation took place on or after January 1st, 2022 with supporting evidence. Unfortunately, one of the main causes of failing applications is that we don't necessarily clearly see in the application that the implementation took place after the date that is specified in the narrative. So that's very important with supporting evidence. Writing down in your narrative that the implementation took place at such a date is not necessarily enough. We need to see with supporting evidence that the thing or the project was implemented after January 1st, 2022 in this year's application for 2023. How you measure the improvement before and after with clear measurable results. It may be hard sometimes to measure before, but if your problem is detailed enough and we can see the impacts it had on procurement processes, it may be enough. However, we need to see after situation, once the project was implemented, that there was a clear improvement. And to do that, obviously the project needs to be implemented after a certain period of time. So it's very important that if the project is implemented or has been implemented just by a few weeks ago, you may not have enough data to demonstrate that you have clear measurable results. So it's important that you choose projects that you will be able to demonstrate that you had clear measurable results. So with that being said, I'll flip to some model submittals that we have. So I will share screen on this one. Brian, all good? Thank you. So on this one, I'm not going to read through all of them in detail. I think what's important and what I want to highlight in the model submittal that we're presenting today is really the structure of how it was presented, because that's probably, I mean, the elements that we're highlighting is one thing, and you can read them in the narrative of the criterion. However, the structure of how it has to be presented is very important. So in this one, it's a project that is related to cost avoidance reporting. So it clearly states in the submittal here what the problem was. Again, not very long, but clear enough. What was the solution that was implemented? In this case, it's a project from last year, so the reference here was 2021. So they are presenting here what has been done to try and solve the problem. So the solution and the process that was put in place was very detailed. So we have a few pages of narrative on that. And they're saying that they've put some dashboards that are now available to department staff. And what are they measuring very specifically here? Item 2, clear and measurable performance results of this initiative. So they have clear and measurable performance as follows. So they developed dashboards with number of views, number of events that were submitted. So they basically, the essence of the project was to collect data on cost reduction and cost avoidance to try and measure that and capture what the procurement function was doing. There was nothing that existed before. So they presented the number of views, the events, utilized for an estimated 5 customer reports each month, etc. So you can see all the measurements that were put in place and the data that was captured that is highlighted here. So it's fairly easy to read, and it demonstrates that what has been done really solved the problem and help improve the performance of the procurement agency. And they also provided additional performance results of this initiative. At the end, they are also providing screenshots. So sometimes if you put something new that refers, for instance, to dashboards or to new forms or new ways of doing things that are going to work electronically, it might be appropriate to insert some screenshots to demonstrate what the outcome was, what the tool that was really in place, and it reassures us that it really happened and it's really working. So you see in this one, they created a supporting document that is dated June 9, 2021. So we see that it has been put in place. And some reports also as of December 2021, demonstrating the cost avoidance that were tracked with the new tool. And again, further details on screenshots. So all of that together, this brings us to a submission of a total of 12 pages. You have probably a third of it or a quarter of it that are screenshots. And when we scroll down those, the submittal, and we see all the screenshots, it reassures us that, first of all, we see that it follows the date that we're looking at, and that something really happened. So, so that's an example of a model submittal that was submitted for number 18. Going to another one, I'll go back to the top. On this one, you see that they've even put a little numbering system to refer to what they are referring to in their submittal as to what section of the two that they are referring to in their document, throughout the document. So again, narrative, background, procurement services, issues formal solicitation on behalf of 37 different divisions, etc. They're stating the problem here, and the problem is well detailed in this case. It refers to the inability of the procurement agency to have proper visibility, or have its internal customers have proper visibility on the whole procurement cycle, which is very long in their case, creates unsatisfaction with their internal stakeholders and customers. And basically that was the original problem. They were tracking some of the procurement steps. However, it created unsatisfaction and the cycle time was long. So they had a review, obviously, and they were using a tool that was Microsoft Access. They had a workflow which made sense. And they realized that it was limited procurement cycle steps were being captured through that tool. So those steps are captured here. So you have, again, details on the problem statement, the solution and innovation. The procurement staff identified all steps of the procurement cycle, which resulted in an average of 33 steps. So they realized in that the steps that they had, that they were measuring themselves for before, were not necessarily accurate, and they were missing steps. So they did the whole process mapping of their procurement cycle. They developed an acquisition process tracker, their tool, which is APT, that outlines each step in the workflow, and that the yellow highlighted field names are the steps procurement lead solely has control over. So they've even identified the ones that they had complete control over, and that they were actually going to measure themselves against. And same here, they provide details of screenshot of the tool. Procurement services establish performance measure to ensure expectation of procurement cycle time frames were being followed. So they are providing background as to how they're going to measure themselves, what is going to be the benchmark, or what is going to be their norm. And they created that dashboard using SharePoint, as well as you see later on, using Power BI as well. So the acquisition process on SharePoint provides every step of the procurement cycle. Screenshots, again, are very helpful. The measurable performance results, the acquisition process tracker automatically migrates into Power BI, and workflow dashboard populates. And then they show what they are really measuring as part of that dashboard. Measurable performance result, again here, screenshot of the dashboard and the division solicitation internal status and strategist. The workload on active solicitations, and the dashboard. You'll see here that they've provided a screenshot of number of days since the solicitation was assigned on an item or a solicitation referring to year 2021. So we can see again that the implementation took place on or after January 2021. So that's the second one I wanted to show. And then the last one, so they are purchasing division is always, so they are providing again an overview, a previous multifunction device lease analysis. Basically, this project was about questioning the purchasing model of some photocopy machines or printers. So they provided data on what it was costing before, and then they documented their actual costing for 2 years. And at the end, they've implemented a new costing structure with dashboards to try and reduce their cost. And it provided some cost savings. So you see total savings here, which demonstrate the clear measurable results. So this one here, you'll see is a little shorter. The overall submittal doesn't have to be 15, 20 pages long. It just has to be clear. and demonstrate what the improvements were. So in this case, this one is a little shorter, brings cost saving. They re-questioned the way they were procuring, but entering into total acquisition cost factor with and how they assisted their internal customer. So that's the third one that we picked up as being a model submittal. And again, the model submittal is not always related to the project itself, but the way it's presented. So that's very important to keep that in mind. So a few notes that I took, before in closing to make sure that you don't forget, obviously, is the not over and above. I mean, what are the main reasons for us failing sometime or not being able to give points for this number 18 is really the fact that it's not over and above. The date of implementation is critical. We saw many that didn't have a date. The project was great. It was very well presented, but we couldn't see that the implementation really took place because there was no reference to a time frame where the project was put together. And sometimes, I mean, we can see many projects that will be submitted that will be similar from agencies to agencies, and for some we will be able to grant points, and for others we won't. For instance, I'm the one that comes up to mind that came up a lot in the last few years was implementing electronic approval and signatures with DocuSign, for instance. We saw many of them that were very well presented. We could see the reduction in cycle time, reduction in paper, etc. And we were able to give points for that. However, a similar project from another agency that was presented just on one page with no clear measurable results, without dates, we were unable to give points just because it was improperly presented. The spirit of the project was, it made sense, but unfortunately the structure and the way it was presented did not meet what we were looking at in terms of demonstration of measurable results, for instance. So dates, as I said, no evidence of implementation. The date is one thing, but we need to see that something was really implemented, and no clear measurable performance result. As I said, those are the main reasons sometimes that we are unfortunately unable to give points for this one. So that's pretty much what I had today for you. Hope that will help. I see some questions in the probably in the chat, or I don't know if they are, and you were able to capture some of that, Brian, but that's pretty much what I had, and hopefully that will be helpful.
Excellent. Thanks, Francois. It's really a fantastic presentation and some great tips. And just one other comment I'd like to add is there are, for most questions on the application has dates on it for the individual submittals. Francois mentioned the date requirement on this one as well. This is the only one that you would not be able to submit a duplicate project on. For example, some of the a lot of the dates say implemented or the RFP was issued or things like that on or after January 1st of 2022. And we do that to give everybody a little bit of extra cushion in 2023 when they're preparing their application. So basically, for those criteria that say on or after, you have up until the date that you submit your application. So again, you could have, as many as 2 or 3 extra months on top of that year or 2-year or 3-year time period that's defined. However, for Criterion 18, we do not accept duplicate projects. So if yours was implemented on January 15th of 2022, you could have submitted that project for last year, but you can't submit the same project again for this year. And we've seen that a few times as well. So just wanted to clarify that. With that, I'd like to go ahead, Francois.
Just one thing I forgot, you reminded me as you were talking about the project and the duplicate factor. It's important that you submit only one project. We see in many submittals agencies that will submit 2 or 3 projects. and it's hard for us. And they probably say, okay, we'll submit those 3 and we'll see what they pick up. You're better off submitting. Actually, it's important. It's written in the narrative that you have to submit 1 project. You're better off submitting 1 that you're sure of and that you will well document than submit 3 that are incomplete or not as well presented. So it's very important. It's written in the narrative, and sometimes we are unable to grant points even though 3 projects were submitted because they're not well documented or well presented, and we cannot see or assess the demonstration of pursuing excellence in procurement. So I forgot to mention that.
Thanks, Francois. Good point. And part of excellence in procurement is following directions, right? So we do that just because the evaluation team has spent so much time on the evaluations and has, we average over 200 applications a year. So as long as it takes you all to put your applications together, you can understand how long it takes us to evaluate. So for all of the criteria, this one as well, please only submit what's asked for. And it would be better for you and for the evaluation team as well. So let's go to the chat here. And I see a question that says, in the areas of scoring, is it either meets criteria full points or are partial points issued per criteria? So pass or fail, full credit or none. Great question, and it is pass or fail, full credit or none for all 18 criteria and their subparts. So 0, 5, or 0, 10 are the applicable points. And we do that specifically because we don't have the ability to subjectively rate some of these that would allow us to apply partial scores. So we do, and that's the way the application's been for 27 years, pass or fail. Brandy asks, can we get a copy of all slides today? I'm sure that Francois would be willing to share that with us. And what we'll do is we'll post it on our website under the AEP Educational Series tab, and that will be available probably sometime later this week or early next week. Alice asks about the model submittals. Says yesterday she looked on the website but couldn't find them. Can you tell me the heading it is under, how to find them? Absolutely. So real quick here, I'm going to share my screen so I can show you how to access those model submittals. And one caveat to that, I will let you know, is that you have to be an NPI member to access the model submittals. And it's a good segue into something I always say: if you're not an NPI member and you are submitting the AEP award application, you're losing money. Application fee for members is $495. For non-members, it's $695. Membership fee is $130. You automatically are going to save $70 there on your AEP application fee, and you'll have access to the model submittals. So I'm going to show you here. You go to the member login. Keep in mind too that the member login for NPI is different than the AEP portal login. You don't have to be a member to submit an AEP application. So you could have a profile there, but not have the same profile for your NPI membership. So I'm going to sign in as myself real quick here. And I can't type. And once logged into the members side, if you go under the members only tab, you'll see a link to the AEP model submittals. And here we have it broken down for each of the criteria. And we usually try and give, 4 or 5 examples. There, we may have more. So for example, you could see on your score sheet that you were marked as a model submittal, and it may not be up here. The reason behind that is it takes a lot of time to post these, and we like to acknowledge model submittals, but they're not necessarily all going to make it up on this page here. But what I like to suggest that people do is look at the model submittals for their type of agency. So if you're a county, if you're a city, if you're a K through 12 district, try and if there are any, try and find those types of model submittals so you can see what a similar organization is doing. All right, stop share, go back to the chat here and see if we have any more. I've got a message. It was a direct message from Rebecca, but I hope she's okay with me sharing it to everybody. And her question is, our procurement division is a bit different. We review all transactions through invoice and credit card for contract compliance. We did have to implement a new vendor registration process to ensure that payments are being made to the vendors and not bad actors pretending to be vendors, which is an issue in our world. Would this count as a procurement function for this criterion? And you know, I'll give my quick response, and then Francois or any of the other evaluation team members online, you can respond to that. So my response is, I think it would depend on the type of vendor registration process and what the outcome was, what the problem was and what the outcome was expected to be. And the reason I say that is because Criterion 7A, part of that is online vendor registration. Now, keeping in mind that that criterion is set up for e-procurement and is specifically defined to have a good e-procurement program, which part of that is online registration. Now, if you implemented a vendor registration platform for a different purpose, and you could show the problem, you can show the solution and measure the outcomes, then I think that might apply. But I'll ask you, Francois, or anybody else on the call today, what are your thoughts on that?
Very well said. That's a very good example of a project that it could make a difference on how it's presented. So as Brian said, if we were to get a narrative that would only outline that it was a vendor registration tool that was put in place, and not necessarily highlight the second part that was presented in the question that was being asked, then we probably would not be able to grant the points. However, if the presentation of the problem says that the new tool was put in place for a different purpose, and that it outlines very well what the problem was originally, and the solution put in place was the implementation of this new vendor registration platform, and we see with measurable results the process that was improved and how it helped improving the efficiency of the agency, I think it would make it. But it couldn't be a better example of a demonstration of how you present your project can make a difference. So hope that answered the question, but it's a very good example.
Excellent, thank you, Francois. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to invite anybody to, again, you can take yourself off mute and ask the question, or you can submit another question in chat. I'm reviewing the chat here just real quick to make sure that we've answered all of those. Looks like it. So I'm going to open it up to any questions. It can be about this presentation, Criterion 18, or anything that any other questions you have about the application itself, the submittal process, any date requirements. So how many points is a passing score? We just got that question from Jennifer. It takes 100 points to be successful on the application. There are 200 possible points, and you have to have 100 to be successful. The reason we do that is we understand there's large differences between procurement functions, and not everybody is able to do everything. For example, there's always legislative issues that prevent certain procurement departments or organizations from doing different things. And also keep in mind that the application is designed to cover cities, counties, special districts, K through 12, higher education, state or provincial agencies. And then of course, there's differences in those between the United States and Canada. So 100 points to be successful. We recommend that everybody submit for greater than 100, because almost every application has some points taken off through the process. and we want to make sure that you're able to be successful. And I can tell you, as long as I've been doing this, which has been, I think, over 12 years now, I've only seen one perfect application. So don't think that you have to be perfect, because it's almost impossible. Other questions, comments? Any comments from the other evaluation committee members that are on the call today?
Yeah, Brian, I'll chime in.
Thanks, Christina.
So I submit for criteria 18 every year. And every year I think I have got a fabulous project. And some years I'm successful and some years I'm not. But I got to tell you, when I am successful, it feels so good to get the points for this criteria.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I love this criterion as well.
Yeah, it's and sometimes just it's very I mean, sometimes it's hard not being able to give points, because we know in many cases agencies did something great. However, in order to be fair to all applicants that do what it takes to meet what is asked for, many times we're unable to give the points. So it's not a matter, and it feels good, as you said, to get it. And sometimes it feels bad for us to not be able to give it just because of a technicality, like a date that was not put on. So that's why I hope that what we share today is going to be helpful in trying to have those situations not happen, or not happen as much as we've seen them in the past.
May I jump in on one other thing really quick? Brian, would you show everybody how to access their scorecards? One of the things that's so important to do is make sure that you review the evaluator's comments on your application, on your previous applications. If we do not award points in any one criteria, we will share with you the reasons why. We want those to be an educational opportunity for you to take into consideration when you're submitting in response to that criterion in the future, so that hopefully you will be successful this year.
Great point, Christine, and absolutely, we get this question frequently, and I will be happy to show the process. You go to AEP application and instructions, and then the AEP application login. And while I'm here, I'll answer one more question that we get quite frequently. I'll get emails and say, hey, this individual who submitted the application last year or for the last 10 years is no longer with us. How do we access their account? Or can we transfer their account to a new name? So we can't transfer accounts, but what we do is the system is set up such that it will recognize the URL of your email address. So for example, my login is bgarrity@goldengate.org. @goldengate.org is the URL portion of my email address. And what this means is that anybody else in my organization that registers a new account and has the @goldengate.org URL of their email address will be able to access prior year's applications. It'll link those accounts together so you can see the history. So that's one question that we frequently get. And then the other one regarding the history is, once you log into your AEP portal, now mine's going to look a little bit different than everybody else's, because I'm a scorer and an administrator. But what you'll have is you'll have this blue tab information, and you can see up here in the bar, in the banner, excuse me, is the history link. If you click on that history link, you'll be able to access the scorecards from all the prior, let's say all the prior years. Once we went electronic, which I believe was 2014 or 15, you can access those applications here in your history. And as Christina mentioned, one important thing is to go back and take a look at the comments. You can see what you submitted by clicking on download. You can see the scores, and then if you received any comments. And so here's a comment that I got on Criterion 8B, the positive comment, fantastic. Here's a comment on Criterion 12, tells me for future what I should do to make my submittal better. This one that says, please include a dated screenshot. So those comments are always extremely valuable. We do require that the evaluators provide a comment if they are not giving you the points. If you do not pass, they're required to leave a comment. They also occasionally will leave nice comments congratulating you on a nice submission.
And Brian, with respect to comments, let me just make one more observation. If we see a deficiency in a Criterion submission that's kind of borderline, and we're going, well, maybe we're thinking, let's go ahead and award the points, but give them a note that says, in the future, here's how to make it better. We're going to go back and take a look at previous year's comments and see if we've made that suggestion to you in the past, and whether or not you've taken that suggestion. So please do make sure to look at those comments and incorporate them into your latest submission.
And it might,
Absolutely.
just to complete, it might be the answer sometimes between the fact that you wonder how come you got the points last year, but you didn't get it this year. It might just be because you didn't, the comment that was left, as Christina mentioned, was not taken into consideration. So that sometimes might be the answer, and sometimes it was borderline, but you may not get it. So it's again sad that we're unable to give it for that reason.
Absolutely. And frequently we see people submit the same thing over and over and over, and they haven't received points on it for many years. It's because they're not reading the comments. Or criteria have slightly changed. Make sure that you read any updates to the criteria. And I just wanted to show you real quick here what the evaluators see. There's no submission obviously on this, but the evaluators will be able to get the file, the submission file, and open it up. They mark yes or no that they pass. They can mark as a model submittal, and they can also leave comments. And as Christina pointed out, we also see prior year comments. So if we said, hey, we'll give you the points next year or this year, but next year you have to do X, make sure you do X next year. Christina pointed out, we reviewed those. All right, looks like we have a couple more items in chat here. Just some comments, no questions. Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left. If there are any additional questions or comments, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask, or type that into the chat. I don't see or hear anything. I'd like to thank you all for attending. Once again, thank Pavilion for being the educational sponsor of our AEP educational series. And we have one last session, which will be 2 weeks from this date, and which is going to be the 26th, April 26th, again at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And that will be a wrap up. We'll allow any questions. We'll discuss the submission and payment process, and we hope to see you there. So please, if you haven't, register on the NPI website for that final series. Bring all your questions. And as a reminder, the application due date is May 15, which I believe this year is a Monday. And, make sure that you're not late. Thank you all. Thank you, Becca from Pavilion. Thank you, Francois, for the presentation, and everybody else for their comments and questions.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.